Most people do not know where Carpenter is.
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to distribute alcohol. It's the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing. I'm an engineer by trade. He kind of broke me down, and I filed for my permits, got my permits for distribution mailed to my house, I kid you not, on March 17th, 2020.
Ooh, good timing.
This bonus episode of Tap and Table is brought to you by Rasta Pasta. Rasta Pasta just celebrated 15 years of One Love in downtown Colorado Springs this October. Their fusion menu filled with Caribbean-inspired creations is unlike anything else. Rasta Pasta is part Italian, part Jamaican, and 100% Colorado Springs. Rasta Pasta features a full bar specializing in local drafts, red stripe beer, and rum specials. Their garlic bread is made with fresh garlic and has a cult following. Matt and I love it dipped in their house-made Caribbean curry sauce. Stop in today at 405 North Tejon Street to enjoy the reggae vibes, relaxed atmosphere, and some of the friendliest service in town. You can find Rasta Pasta's full menu and more at realrastapasta.com or by clicking the link in the description. Now, back to the show.
If I need to take two, we'll see how it goes. All right. Welcome to Tap and Table. I'm Matthew Schniper. My co-host is Ryan Hannigan. He is behind the camera today doing our technical work. You may hear from him though. We'll see what happens. I am joined here today by Adrian Olson, James Wicker, and Chaz Marsh. Adrian is the owner and CEO of Colorado Springs-based Ascent Beverage. James is the partner and director of sales at Ascent Beverage. And Chaz Marsh is the partner and founder of Jackson Hole Stillworks, which, as you guessed, is located in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And yes, that is far away, but I'm going to make a case for it being local. Stay tuned for that. And it's tied to the Springs not only through Ascent Beverage, its distributor. Special thanks to 4 by Brother Luck for hosting us today here. And I'm just going to jump right in, actually with a little quick toast, because we have something really delicious in front of us. Yeah. We may as well have a little sip together now.
Cheers.
So cheers, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me.
So great to meet you.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
In fact, we're going to come back to this product, I'm sure, but can you give us give our listeners a very quick rundown of what we just sipped together?
Sure. Absorica for Travis and I was the brainchild of a bunch of conventions that we had been to, and we'd experienced some short barrel-aged gin, so we just decided to go along with it. We took a very big gin. It is not Great Gray. It's a very big, bold gin. When we have it come off the stills, we put it into used barrels for 14 months and then siphon it out and siphon back into brand new barrels for 4 to 6 months. So it gets a lot of complexity. There's a lot of oak and vanilla and caramel and a few flavors that are only coming from the barrel, not the botanical base. Nutmeg and clove are not part of the botanical side, but it just is a fun experience. You know, it's kind of like whiskey and gin met and had a baby.
It's so good. Yeah. And you guys can find this on a lot of bars in town. It's here at 4 by Brother Luck. I saw it last night at Nacho Matrix. I know it's at District 11. I mean, we can go down the list, and we probably will a little bit later. But let's jump back to Adrian. Yeah. I'd love for you to give us a quick rundown on who you are, how and when you started Ascent Beverage, and maybe James can jump in then with what spirit makers are currently in your portfolio. So kind of a 2-part question there.
Yeah, it's great. Again, great to be here. Thank you for that. Ascent Beverage was an idea that percolated in my mind for a few years before we actually pulled the trigger. So the backstory is my family actually owns and operates a whiskey distillery in Carpenter, Wyoming. Most people do not know where Carpenter is.
Don't know.
Yeah, 20 miles east of Cheyenne. There is a lot of antelope and wind. It is
Very true. That's the terroir.
Yes, indeed. It's the smallest legal distillery in North America, and my brother-in-law pestered the hell out of me for the first few years. He started in about 2016, and he kept pestering me like, I want to get into Colorado. I'm local. I'm right here in Colorado Springs. Told him, I have a day job, man. Leave me alone. I don't want to distribute alcohol. It's the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing. I'm an engineer by trade. He kind of broke me down, and I filed for my permits, got my permits for distribution mailed to my house, I kid you not, on March 17th, 2020.
Ooh, good timing. Way to start a business in the midst of...
Add to that, it actually was great timing. Definitely for you guys to be able to get into the market.
Yeah.
And a lot of places, a lot of big corporate companies weren't letting their staff go in.
Yeah.
And these guys were able to make a lot of great contacts and connections with people.
Yeah. Needless to say, we did not start in bars and restaurants. We went and tackled the off-prem market. We went for the retail. A little bit of nervousness starting a business during a global pandemic, but turned out to be, in hindsight, an amazing time to start liquor distribution.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Adrian just mentioned something off-prem. I think it's important for the listeners to know the difference from off-prem and on-prem. Most people don't understand that term. That's an industry term, right?
Yeah.
Off-prem means that your alcohol is consumed off-premises. So you go to a liquor store, you buy it, you consume it at home. It's off the premises. On-premises means just that. It's consumed on-premises, whether it's here at Brother Luck or Basil and Barley, someplace like that. It's going to be consumed on premises. So you'll, in the industry, that's a term that's commonly used for sure. And most of our brands have been working their way into on-prem. Some places like Rob's Red Rum, which is you can get at, they have a great cocktail at Front Range Barbecue. We got Big Lost Mead, which for a lot of people don't know what mead is. Mead is wine made with honey. It's actually the oldest form of alcohol, right? We've got obviously Jackson Hole. We've got 1874 Distilling out of Del Norte, Colorado. Apple Valley Cider, which is a great cider. I love their honey cinnamon.
Oh, it's
just
so
came
good.
out
So
this
good.
season. It's really delicious.
That's down in Penrose.
Yeah. Some great stuff. Then we also got, I'm drawing a blank. I forget.
Backwards Distilling.
Backwards Distilling.
Yeah.
They make a really good cinnamon shine that's kind of like that baker cinnamon. I call it my liquid cinnamon roll. So
If you're lucky enough to find their absinthe,
they're
amazing.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Do you have like somewhere in or around a dozen or a little bit less than in your portfolio?
Yeah, right around a dozen now. Yeah.
And those dozen, each of them might have multiple products. I think the first time I did a tasting with you, I saw like 60 bottles come out of your truck. And I think we literally sampled 30 in a row and just were, sip and dump. But it's a lot to get to know and get familiar with as a distributor and learn to know the product so you can go sell it, so to speak, and get that product placement in the liquor store or in the bar or wherever else. So that's how does Ascent select makers they want to work with? Because you could obviously, they could grow. There's more makers here that you could approach. There's more makers all over our region. I gather you're sort of a small regional company and probably want to stay there. I don't see you necessarily jumping across the country out of nowhere. But how do you select who gets in?
Yeah, I think, we have a couple different, I call them checkpoints, right, that they've got to go through. I think the first and most important checkpoint is they got to not source. Most people don't realize that when you go to a liquor store, 30 to 40% of your whiskeys on the shelf are coming from a company called MGP. Not that MGP is bad, it's just that people will source MGP product to put a label on and then call it theirs. Yeah. And we're really looking for people that are authentic, that they're working with local farmers. Yeah. They're working, and they're making it themselves. They're milling their own grain. They're toasting their own barley. They're doing all their things, right? I think that's really the first checkpoint for us. Then obviously, does it taste good, right? Is it, because we've got, as a small company, we've got to hang our hat on our reputation. And so when I go into a liquor store, bar, or restaurant, the words that should be coming out of their mouth is, what do you got for me this time? And what tasty new thing do you have? I mean, that's important. And I think the third one is, are they good to work with? Yeah. Guys like Chaz come down regularly, and really help us understand their products, and they're fun to work with. We have a great time, and we go out to different bars and restaurants and support our customers. And I think that those three things are kind of the most important things when you're really looking at choosing a brand, right?
Yeah, and to add one thing to that too, one of the things we really look for are brands that are willing to grow with us and go through our growing pains together.
We have created more of a friendship than a partnership, but it's true. Like last night, we were having the best time at La Fourchette in Pueblo, and I mean, we howled it up and had a great time with some other folks that you guys work with at 80/20 Wines down there, and just good people. And I think that building relationships, I mean, maybe it's a microcosm of a community, but ultimately, if you're in the industry, whether that's retail or on-prem, restaurants and bars, there's kind of a crew of people that all know one another. I mean, you're getting, all of them, and we're getting to know more and more, but it just makes it more fun. You come in, you see an old face or an old friend, and you're like, hey, how are you? And it's just, it makes it
How did you
Really
guys
fun.
originally connect then? I'm curious about that. And from the Jackson Hole Stillworks perspective, how do you choose a distributor you want to work with?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure you've been approached by others who are like, oh, we'll give you the moon, baby. But you're like, no, I'm sticking with my guys. So what's that about?
No, that's true.
That's a great question. I mean, I'll take a stab at it.
Go
You
for it.
jump
Yeah,
in.
yeah, for sure.
So the connection point, I actually started the distribution with one brand. It was my family's distillery. My brother-in-law, Mike Borg, who is the distiller and owner of Arcola whiskey, he was pretty plugged in up in the small Wyoming distillers market.
Yes.
And,
we all know each other very
yeah,
well.
yeah, it's a tight-knit community.
Totally.
So Mike made the intro. We started talking. Chaz and Travis were early adopters. We
Yeah.
love those guys. They've walked through the growing pains with us, and just been an amazing partner.
Yeah, we've had a great time.
Yeah.
We were very lucky in that sense that, Wyoming itself has that very small community feel. We don't have a whole lot of distilleries, and the ones that are there, we all work together to try and promote each other. Calling out the Absinthe from Backwards, or Big Lost Meads, which are phenomenal, by the way, and they've got a great run of SKUs. But anywhere we go, we're promoting our friends and people that we've gotten to know. So you have a Deer Hammer shirt on.
Yeah, I thought that'd be appropriate to wear. I
it's a
selected this
great one.
mindfully. I know it's not in your portfolio, but I love these guys.
They're,
I was like,
they're great.
awesome
I'm gonna
dudes.
wear, this is, thank you for noticing. This was selected mindfully.
Well, I think, and to that, I think, those guys would agree, it is a very, very hard industry, and especially if you are making the product and authentically. The time it takes, the work it takes. Mike Borg's the same. I mean, you're, in and out of the distillery and in the market 80, 100 hours a week. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes a toll on family, and everybody's got to kind of be in this together. But you go up to Deer Hammer, and those guys have got some amazing stills, and they've got an incredible process of making their products.
Yeah.
And we got to know them years ago, and whenever I see it and somebody's reaching for a bottle of whiskey, I am like, oh, no, you should take this.
And that's in Buena Vista, by the way. If
Yeah,
you guys are
great
traveling,
guys.
go down there, see them. I want, because again, we're making this case of you being local. Paint me a picture. Tell us about Jackson Hole Stillworks. How long have you been around? What makes your what else is your company ethos? I know you guys do some art things and some environmental things, and there's a lot to touch there. But introduce us, take us on a little journey to Jackson Hole real quick.
Yeah, so again, a backstory. I was a fly fishing guide for 9 years, fresh and salt water, and I didn't really have a windfall, so I started applying to business schools and ended up getting into Daniel's School of Business at DU. And so I kind of hung up my oars, and my polling platform was put to rest down in Louisiana, but ended up going to school. And while I was there, I was introduced to a now very close friend of mine who was brewing beer. And he was like, you want to come over and brew with me? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. So we got really heady into it. We were really playing a lot with grain bills and yeast strains, and sort of trying to formulate new flavor compounds with different beers. And I was all in. And so I started utilizing it in my classes for stats or marketing, and kind of inadvertently built a business model for a brewery. And after I graduated, I worked a couple different jobs. One was more like office space, kind of cubicle, desk job sort of thing. And I just was not happy there. So ended up walking out the door one day, and I called Travis, my business partner, who we've known each other for years, 25 years. And I was like, hey, do you want to start a brewery with me? And he got on, he was like, yes, I totally do. The only problem is we're about to have 4 breweries in Jackson proper and another one over the hill. And it's like, it's a pretty crowded market. He said, but what about a distillery? And we both shifted our heads into that concept, knowing that we were going to be able to do fermentation and work with grain and yeast and create beautiful flavors. And it just kind of went from there, kind of off and running. And 2014, we registered our LLC in Cheyenne, and we've been cranking away ever since.
And tell me just on a quick hit on, I've seen your bottles, they have these beautiful pictures of animals. This is a series, or this is like a give back, or tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, so part of our business model and that side of authenticity, I think, has to do a lot with engaging your community. And one of our first product was vodka, and anybody that has a grain to glass distillery knows that that's the first thing you put out typically, because it really stops the financial bleeding of what you're going through to get off the ground. And we were going to put some art in the back of the bottle, and we kind of wanted to see that reflective and magnification of sort of the details of some beautiful piece of art that would be attractive to customers. So we called upon an amazing artist in Jackson named Katie Ann Fox. She's young and she's insanely talented, Tigger energy, and she was willing to take the leap with us. She did this beautiful piece, kind of a realistic perspective of the Tetons from Antelope Flats, and it was gorgeous. And we raffled off her art piece, and it raised about $15,000 for the Art Association. And the light bulb went off for Travis and I immediately. We're like, ooh, maybe we should do that again. And that kind of started the beginning of our vodka art label series. It's called The Spirit of Wyoming, and we take about 40 or 50 Wyoming artists that enter the contest every year. The winner is on our label for the year. They win $2,500 and get 2 cases of the vodka as well. And I think what happens there is that we're pulling artists from all over the state. We get a lot of applications from Colorado. A lot of people want to be involved.
I was going to say, we might need Ryan to apply. Ryan, Ryan's also a graphic artist, so
cool.
I would be happy to share these winnings with you if you were to apply. Anyway, continue, please.
No, but it is that. I mean, it's kind of bringing people together, and I think when an artist from, Saratoga wins, or when an artist from Cody or Sheridan, and we've only had 2 Jackson artists that won it, which is really kind of interesting because there's a lot of concentrated talent there. But when they are winning in these other towns, people pick up on it, and there's a lot of collectors, and they go and find the artists. And they're like, cool. Hey, will you sign your bottle for me? Because I love.
So in someone's man cave, there's a line of these all signed, and they're happy for the next release, and it's creating a collection for them. That's cool.
Yeah. That's actually a vodka bottle you want to collect.
Yeah. Is there also, was I correct about a give back too, aside from the artist winning, is there like an environmental series or something?
Yes.
Okay.
So the way that it works out is that it's $5 a vote, and every year we have raised somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 annually for the Wyoming Arts Council, which is a great organization. They do a lot of rural work with education, art supplies. They also do performing arts as well, and it's just a great way to kind of give back. Travis and I both grew up in art families, and it just makes sense for us. Great Gray, actually, we give 3% of our profits to the Teton Raptor Center, which if you ever come to Jackson, it is one of the best things to see while you're there. You get to be around eagles and kestrels and kites and owls and all of this stuff, and it's a great education forum for kids and families. But they're one of the few re-release programs in the Mountain West. So they actually put those birds back into wild, or at least from fledgling to puppet feeding and flight pens, and then the release. And they're just great people and doing good things, and we love birds. And so Katie Ann is the permanent artist for our Great Gray Gin.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's a term that's come up a couple times. I want to dive into this deeper. This was on my question list, but we've talked about grain to glass, and some listeners may not know what that is. So I'm going to ask one of you to define it. And then also, how does that create a more unique and sustainable product? So let's just, for the table, let's dive into grain to glass.
You do it. You answer it.
You're the guru, man. On that,
I don't know. You guys want to take a stab at it? But I think that grain to glass fundamentally is creating a cyclical value to not just our business, but to farmers and to people that are involved in the process and the production of the products we need in order to make our spirits. And I think there's just something, we keep saying authentic, right? And when you are milling grain, I mean, we're doing that with buckets of, non-GMO corn and organic oats and non-GMO wheat rye, and it's just, you're seeing it get worked into, it's almost like a coarse flour, and then you're putting it into the mash tun, and while you're doing that, you're just reflecting on this great relationship that we have with our farmers, who are, they are producers for us, but they're way more friends. It's kind of like you guys.
They're in your direct region. They're right around you. Okay.
They're based in the Bighorn Basin.
Okay.
And we were just at our main farmer who does our corn, wheat, rye. We were just at his place last week. We were out there and visiting with he and his wife, and out in the combine and running through the fields and doing corn harvest, and that connects you a lot more with what you're trying to create. We say terroir and wine, but you can kind of also play that into spirits, and it does make a difference.
And I think one of the reasons why it's important also is you're reclaiming what's lost. And what I mean by that is that a great example is the San Luis Valley, where 1874 distilling is down there. There's the rye project they have down there, and that's important because for a long time rye was not grown in the San Luis Valley, right? There's lots of farming and local production and crop rotation and things that were done in the past, which has been replaced by corporate farming and pesticides and all that stuff, right?
Yep.
And so by encouraging grain to glass, working with local farmers, then what you're doing is you're restoring some of those things. You're bringing rye back to the San Luis Valley. You're bringing some of these skill sets back to farming and rotating crops and more natural ways of fertilization that were lost to corporate farming. So restoring some of that is really, I think, important. Right?
Yeah, so they're in Del Norte, and I know right down the road is Monte Vista, and there's the Farm Brewery. I don't know if you guys have been out there. Incredible.
Colorado Malting Company.
One of the only estate breweries in the world, and the definition of that, I believe, is like pretty much everything for that beer comes from that land.
Yeah.
The one qualifier is they take the yeast strain and have it labbed for them out in Seattle or something and shipped back. Other than that, though, they grow it, they malt it, they roast it, they grow their own hops. It's all encompassing, cyclical, circular. But for 1874, they're able to grab those same things and use, was it Colorado Malting is the company?
I believe so.
So like you have these, in a small area, it stays pretty local. As opposed to 18-wheeler pulls up with 50-pound bags of grain that were grown in Kansas and beyond, or even Europe or something. Maybe someone using, for beer making, people are bringing stuff all the time from Czech Republic and Germany and far places. So to simplify it again, it's just grain to glass would refer to local sourcing and the equivalent of farm to table or even the ethos of like snout to tail. You're using it all, whatever. Like this idea of small, local, simple, real, no pesticides, no whatever. And then relationships. The farmer, the grower, the brewer, the distiller. So have we couched it? Do we know what grain to glass is now?
It's the epitome of supporting local.
Need more.
And you're one example in portfolio. And what are a couple more? Who should we shout out that do it? And
Apple Valley is a great example of a cider that is also the equivalent of grain to glass. All their apples are grown right down in that area, right? They make it all by hand right there.
Or even 300 Days of Shine, right?
That's another
They
one.
make true Prohibition style shine. They use beet sugar from Fort Morgan, Colorado. Instead of getting sugar cane or getting some random source of sugar, they're getting it right down the road, right?
Cool.
So that's another example.
And that's in your portfolio too, 300 Days of Shine. Okay. And they again have a ton of products. They've got some really cool new stuff. I saw at one of the, I think it was like Tasteful Colorado City or something, but I interviewed those guys years ago and they had just launched and had a couple things, but it's really been cool to see them expand and how many cool products they have now. So that's awesome. I'm a big fan of the ethos of grain to glass, and so
it begs to just throw in the honey for Big Lost Mead is all locally sourced from them. Honey fans know that honey from different areas tastes very different.
100%.
And it's so regional, so it's really cool to try things like that as well. Mead is just such a special beverage, and those guys, they put in a ton of work and work very hard to connect with those bee farmers to source that stuff, and that's more relationships for them.
I used to have a couple hives in my yard. Has a lot of arugula that reseeds itself every year, and it puts up these little yellow flowers, but the bees love it. And some of the years I'd harvest, my honey had this nice black pepper thing going on from the arugula that nobody else around me had.
Very cool.
And then
Cool.
the rest of it was just sort of wildflower harvested from the neighborhoods, anything in 5 mile distance. But it was really neat though to again just try that honey and have an actual terroir of like, this is mine. And then of course you probably traveled to a place like Mississippi, the famous Tupelo honey or this or that, where or some of the weird ones like eucalyptus tree or something where you get these really strong flavors.
I was in London at a food expo, and they had each different country in these pods in this huge expo center, right? And there was this lady that had honey from Australia, and her two honeys she featured was rose and eucalyptus. And the eucalyptus imparts this really cool flavor. So when you're making certain dishes and you want to impart a different style of flavor to that particular dish, it does some really cool stuff, right?
Oh yeah,
which is awesome.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I want to jump to the world of small scale distribution. We talked a little bit about this, but compared to these big vendors, again, the big makers, the MGPs of the world, those kind of things, that's national, that's international. You guys are much more local. James, you're driving the state weekly all over, I don't even know how many miles you put on your truck.
Lots.
Yeah.
Lots. About 3,000 miles a month.
That's incredible. I just come back from a trip and I'm tired just from 2 weeks of travel. I can't imagine what your day-to-day is like, but that kind of leads me to the question, what are the challenges at this scale? You know, a lot of small businesses compared to big businesses, there's a whole different list of challenges. What's it like to run a small distribution company?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the warehousing side, and you can talk about the slinging it around the state side. I mean, it's different. It's different scale when you're talking about us versus a large RNDC or some distributor like that. They're dealing with forklifts and pallets. We're dealing with cases. You know,
hand carried. There is no forklift.
This is sweat equity. This is literal sweat equity at work.
That's true, man.
I mean, I just took for us, 5 pallets is a massive order. I just took a 5 pallet shipment the other day. My back's still a little bit sore from that.
And then you unloaded 5 pallets manually without a forklift.
Correct. Yeah, that's how we're doing it right now.
That's burly.
Yeah, it's literally I tell people we are the distributor equivalent of a craft brewery or a craft distillery. We're doing it the hard way.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about
I think,
slinging it?
I think there's some logistical challenges. You know, if you don't want to, obviously the first one is fuel. You know, fuel costs can drive you out of business faster. You can say, look at these split. And then the logistics costs of, you don't want to pay for a hotel room being out all the time. So what we've tried to do logistically is looking at them, and it's on average about 250 to 300 mile loops you can cover in a day. And so, you know, a great example would be next Wednesday. I'm going to do a loop where my first visit will be at 10 a.m. There's a store that opens 80/20. I've got to pick up some stuff there and drop off some stuff at 10 a.m. in Pueblo. Hit some Pueblo stores, Canyon City, Salida, Buena Vista, Leadville. Then I'll loop back around, hit Divide and Woodland Park on my way back. And
all in a day, and sleep in your own bed.
And sleep in your own bed, which is the nice part.
And some of this is dropping off products. Someone ordered it and like a liquor store needs a case of Zorka, or another is stopping at try to sell a new thing, or what is that? Is each stop a little different? Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a mixture of that. You know, a lot of them you can get pre-orders. So you have your pre-orders loaded, and then you obviously keep extra product, and then when you go to the store, either if it's a reorder or if it's a new product, because you're always like, you know, you try to focus on a different product every time because you want to be fresh and new and relevant, right? So one trip I might on that loop I might focus on Jacksonville. The next trip maybe I focus on Apple Valley. And when you drop off the product right then and there, an invoice, you know, you just do a manual written invoice at that time. It's what we call in the industry a hot shot. And hot shots are very common for small craft distributors like us because we don't have the resources, or we don't have a driver that's going to go back out to Leadville 3 or 4 days later. So we hot shot it. So, you know, that adds to the fuel cost, because then you're weighing down the vehicle with all this booze. Sometimes that truck is completely filled. I mean, I have the front seats piled up, the back seats piled up, and the beds piled up, and I can barely close the lid, you know, to keep everything in, right? So it's some interesting challenges from that perspective. And then, you know, when you're as a distributor, is when does the area justify enough growth to, you know, one of the things we're focusing on the West Slope is, the big question we're asking now, because we have a rep out there who's doing really well, is when do we stand up a warehouse out there for them right now? Because I'm manually muling that over the second week of every month trying to make sure they have a month's worth of product. So you're kind of guessing like, what does a month look like for them? And so I try to make sure I have enough on the truck to get them to them. And and when do we justify bringing on a driver part-time, or what does that look like? And those are all the questions you're asking as a small distributor, because those transitional pieces is where you're going to be successful or not successful in business as you grow. Because small guys like us, we don't have investors that are dumping a bunch of money into the pot so that we can go out and get some trucks and do some stuff. We're self-funding this, right? Yeah. So how do we balance growth and cash and all the things together, right? It's tricky for sure. It's it's tough to navigate,
it's tough,
right?
Yeah, it is.
It goes back to your sweat equity. I mean, it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
So like it's scaling as you grow and figuring out those things. I can hear you working it out loud right now. I mean, and it sounds like you're up against, you're growing and you're right at that point now of like needing to figure that out, that next warehouse, that next driver.
Absolutely.
And someday in your future, you might even have a forklift. It could happen.
That might happen. We can't wait. Our backs can't wait. Lower back.
Right?
Chaz, let's go back to this idea we've talked about grain glass and the ethos of the local and how different you are from the big brands and stuff. I guess I'd like to talk about where to find this product in the spring, not just this, anything in your portfolio, but this will be a great chance for you to tell our listeners where to pick this up, both in liquor stores if they do want to enjoy this at home, some of the restaurants that are carrying it. We've got a menu in front of you here from 4. I know Kyle put one of the cocktails on the fall menu is made with Absorca. So let's give some love to our businesses here in the Springs.
Yeah, sure.
Specifically with Jackson Hole, because that's fun. You're here, so let's do it.
Adrian and James I don't want to miss anybody, so you guys are going to go. But obviously, 4 by Brother Luck has been a great partner. They've been wonderful from the outset. Basil and Barley are just fantastic. They've got a great Manhattan on their menu that you definitely should go try. Plus their pizzas are amazing. And just a whole plethora of people. I mean,
talk about the restaurants, and then I'll talk about the retail.
I think we have a lot of great restaurants here. I think a couple that really stick out is, I really love Absorca and Bee's Knees, and so there's this great wild mushroom pizza at Toasted Bistro in Manitou. And so it's a great little pit stop in the middle of the afternoon, right? When you're hungry and you've been running around all day and you just need a refuel. So that's a great little afternoon spot. You'd mentioned Basil and Barley, and that was the first time I'd had Absorca as a Manhattan. And they have that spicy oil that I put on my pizza crust there. That's really good. And I think Red Gravy, they just brought it on. And then that basil cocktail over at Edelweiss is really good that they put the Absorca on the menu there. I was really enjoying that. So those are kind of some ones that just stick out right off the top of my mind.
So everyone, it must be fun as the maker to see how the bartenders and the mixologists are playing with your product. You're like, we didn't think of that. We weren't going to put it with that. Like who?
That's the joy.
Yeah.
Right? You're making all this stuff and you're buried into the distillery for, 80, 100 hours a week, and you get out on the road. And one of the best things for Travis and I, the first time we heard someone make the call, and they're like, "Hey, give me a Great Gray and tonic," and they didn't know us, and we were a few seats down at the bar, and we both nudging each other. We're like, "Did you hear that?" This was years ago, and we were just like, "That is awesome," and that means a lot. But when you're connecting with, say Kyle here is just a genius behind the bar, and you can see their gears turning and trying to think of great ways to, just express the fun parts of what these spirits have to offer. And that's kind of what you're looking for, and then get a sip of it and be like, wow, this is the best damn cocktail I've ever had with Absorca or Great Gray.
That's cool.
It really sounds like you're a musician that just heard your song on the radio for the first time.
Right.
Yes, it would be
right. That's kind of that experience, right?
Right.
Which is kind of cool.
And the retail liquor store side, talk about that a little bit. It's funny. Last night I was at a tasting, and I was doing the tasting. It was at Hope Spirits here locally. Somebody walked in, bought a bottle that I distribute, and I was like, wow, that is cool. It's like the equivalent of what you just described, only on the distributor side. I was like, give me a fist bump, brother.
Nice.
That's awesome. Thanks for supporting us. So, but we're distributed in retail liquor stores all over Colorado Springs as well. So going south to north, Clicks Wine and Liquor down in Fountain, great partners of ours. When you come up Central Springs, Patriots Liquor out on the east side of town, Freedom Liquor also on the east side of town, great partner. Veterans Liquor, lots of liquor. Going up north, Monument Cork and Bottle, great partners. So you can really find this stuff pretty well spread about all over town. We have some just great partnerships with the retail folks as well. So,
and is it one of those situations like check with your favorite local liquor store? If they don't have it, request it.
Yep.
Yes. Tell them you heard about it on the show and
correct.
Call
That's
you
right.
guys.
That is the best way.
That's the best way.
When a customer is asking for something, we can go and do our sales work and be magicians as much as we can be, but if a customer says, I would like that, that impacts a retail owner or manager as much, if not more, than what we could ever do to try and get it on the shelves.
One I did forget to mention that I really love is they make the Corpse Survivor #2, that Shame and Regret. It's a
great drink.
That is a really good cocktail.
It's my all-time favorite.
Absinthe and everything. And that's
Amazing.
delicious.
That's
So we gotta, that sounds like an after episode field trip for us.
Right.
That's what's cool though. So I mean, again, the listeners, that's your entry point. Go support one of our local restaurants and bartenders who made this great thing with this product. Once you fall in love with it that way, go get a bottle, play with it home, make it your new thing. I think one of my first barrel-aged gin experiences was at Woods down in Salida. Have you been there?
PT was at our distillery 3 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
We got to hang out with him for the weekend.
Yeah.
He is an amazing guy and has been a close friend for a long time. We actually use his barrels for Absorca.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Glad I mentioned that. Yeah.
Right.
So that was several years ago. I just remember I was down I was doing a little Salida trip or story, and it was just, I don't know, like you have your first time with everything, right? I was like, I don't know if I've tried a barrel-aged gin. Let me try that. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Very different, but it's awesome.
And this just, the first time I had this, that was what my first association was. And they're both great products. But I know we've really focused on this one, but there are a lot of other fine products in the whole portfolio we can get to. I kind of want to step back now to a bigger question. Are there any trends you guys are tracking in your world? The trajectory of the craft spirit world these days? I know that, are you gaining ground against mass market labels? Are you slumping because of we've read articles about the NA movement is, wine and beer and spirits are all down on the marketplace, that kind of thing. What are the economic factors you're facing, and what does success look like for you guys on the maker and distributor side?
I think there's one thing that we talk about all the time, Prop 125, and how that changed the world for the liquor industry in the state of Colorado.
Okay, walk us through it.
So Prop 125 allowed big box stores, all their permits allowed for wine. So if you go into King Soopers now, every King Soopers has wine available. They had beer before. That was a big deal. That changed the world for a lot of the mom and pop, off-prem, again, retail liquor store accounts that we work with. When your sales drop by 40%, 50% because you're losing all that traffic to big box stores, your budget goes down. Yeah. And that hurts everybody. It's hurting not only the mom and pops, but also the distribution side. So that's something that we've seen that's really been a big factor in Colorado as of late, across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you're sitting on a bar stool and somebody jerks out one leg, that bar stool gets really wobbly really quick, right? And that's what we're seeing. I mean, I think there's some trends now. People are understanding that Colorado had a vibrant craft market. Because of the mom and pop stores. You could be a small brewery and go in and sell a couple cases of your beer and kind of get your brewery off the ground to this. Then you could do the same thing with your winery or distillery, because they would be more than willing. Now they're not willing to take that chance because they don't have the cash flow to take chance on small brands. So it's really hurt the craft industry as a whole, right? And so there's some steps being taken. There's some initiatives led by the Liquor Retailers Association. And they're doing some separate bills. They're kind of breaking it up. And one of the bills really that's going to become before legislature in January, when this new session is, to lock in liquor sales only to liquor stores. And I think that's going to have a big impact, and here's why. as a small business, you build your business based upon business trends and what you see coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And so if you have a little bit of predictability, right, then you can say, okay, if I know I'm going to have liquor and I can base my cornerstone of my liquor store on that, then I can make a 5-year or 10-year business plan and build on that. And then it becomes a little bit more predictable and a little bit more consistent from a small business standpoint. And right now it stands, we don't know if liquor could go into the big stores, so they're kind of scared and pulling back because there's not that predictability, there's not that foundation. And so I think doing some simple things like that and putting some things in place will make it a little more predictable for the small liquor store owners, and then help the craft industry, because then they'll be willing to spend a little bit on beer or wine or cider or spirits or whatever it may be, right?
I mean, a lot of the retailers are family run, and you've got, talk about community. I mean, to make that small move, I mean, there is a liquor store pretty much next to every grocery store around town. To make that small move to go over there and buy from them, whether it's a couple dollars more or whatever, makes a huge difference in their lives. And I see that a lot. But everybody that we've met, I mean, they've got husband-wife teams, and the kids are involved, and they're running these stores, and they care about what's on the shelves. And that's matters huge to certainly the craft industry, is that they can make those references like, hey, I know you like this, but why don't you try this local Colorado whiskey or Colorado vodka or Wyoming vodka or whatever. It just matters. And although we may not hit that price point every time, I think the economy has kind of had that impact too, where people are a little bit gun shy of spending that extra money on something that's handmade. But as you're kind of getting the sense of this, it is a ton of work for us to make it, for these guys to put it out there. And that's not easy. And I don't know what you're paying yourself. It's probably not much, and we don't pay ourselves much at all either. And it's about being passionate about what we do more than kind of, money doesn't grow on trees. It takes a lot of work. So to make that little effort for people to go into those stores, you're going to make people very happy and bring a little bit more money to the table.
Yeah, we're hopeful though. With some of this, what James talked about in the legislature right now, I think getting clarity on that one way or another is going to help stores be able to create the 3, 5, 10-year plans, and also be, for some people, an off point. Like we've done this for a long time, and we're going to jump out. So I think everybody's been in a holding pattern this year. That's what we've seen, and we've seen it in our sales. And part of that, I've been telling everybody, we hit an inflection point as a company this year. It was grow or die, because there was so much, just everybody did not know what the future was holding. Everybody was holding back. And so we had to kind of dig a little bit deeper and work harder than we've ever had to work before. So,
do you think there's some winding back of this? Like, will there be a day that Costco doesn't sell liquor then, because this might pass and they might pull that out and give it back to the cold trains and the small shops? Or some of those are going to be grandfathered and cemented, and like, well, we can't necessarily come back from that. But
the prevailing wisdom is to grandfather and just kind of stop the bleeding.
Okay.
And not create too much disruption, right? Just let's create something here forward that makes sense, and grandfather those people in. So, because you don't want to just upset the apple cart and just really turn back things, although to a certain degree it would be nice for some of the smaller stores. There's a reality of business in the business world and lobbyists and all of that, right? So making something that's a workable solution for all parties involved is kind of at the interest of this legislative push, starting from, our legislature runs from January to May. So, if I can call it action, is like, people call your legislators in January, tell them you're in support of things like this, please, because they got to know your voice. Because the lobbyists from the big companies are up there and they're being heard, but will you be heard? Right?
Yeah.
That's the key. That's how we get things done.
Yeah. And I think I've seen like Axe and the Oak was in Costco, if I'm not mistaken.
They were.
If you get approached by the Costco, do you immediately say, can't do it, I've got these relationships, like we don't grow like that and that's not for us? Or is it like one of those Stonyfield Farms examples when Walmart comes at you, you're like, well, wait a minute now, we just changed the industry. We just put a natural approach to yogurt at Walmart, like that's a big deal. But then Stonyfield becomes, the next
back to how much
or
we
whatever.
pay ourselves.
Yeah, can you do that ethically or inside of your wheelhouse? Can it be done in a way that still works? I don't know. Or?
It's a good question. Most of the manufacturers that we work with couldn't supply Costco. I mean, just honestly, like just most of them couldn't. We've always had the organizational ethos of supporting mom and pops and supporting local and building partnerships with people. So would we do that? Could we do that? I don't know.
I think the key to that is because we do work with some larger companies, Total. Specifically,
Yep.
but Total will pay the same price as a mom and pop store will.
Correct.
And I think fairness in pricing is something also that they're pushing for, and legislation in the spring that I think makes a lot of sense. That
Yep.
it shouldn't be that King Soopers can pay $5 for a bottle of vodka and everybody else is paying $8, right?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more of a level playing field, and I think that's a key to, if you're going to work those, and we don't actively call those accounts, we do occasionally get a call.
Yeah, we do.
But I think from our ethos, you talk about culture, right? Okay, we're going to be fair to everybody across the board and make sure that everybody's on a level playing field. And that's what we can control from a company perspective, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was Ryan's well-timed alarm to me to remind me to start winding this down. But anyway, I think we've covered a lot of what I hoped to cover with you. I always want to make sure we didn't miss something that's important to you. Anything else that we didn't talk about, whether that's elaborating on green to glass or I think I had some short notes about quality and R&D. I wrote those down as keywords here. The American dream is by small companies.
Yeah.
What did I not cover, guys? What else do you want to say or let our readers or listeners know?
I mean, we can dive into any of those a little bit deeper, but in an effort to keep it short, it is the American dream side of what we're doing is kind of the part for us that just keeps you driving. You want to be able to have success. I mean, we really do work like crazy, and with all the taxes on family and lifestyle and everything else, you just hope that you get the opportunity to make somebody happy and to have a bartender really enjoy working with your products, to understand sort of the core value of our business and continue to build those relationships. That to us is monumental, and it certainly is a lot of work to do that. So buy local, buy craft,
buy local, buy often.
Buy often.
Yeah, I think the question I get a lot, I don't know if you get this a lot at tastings, is like, how do you get cinnamon in there? How do you get Asian pear? And people are like, how do I develop those taste buds, or how do I get that skill set? And there's a couple of ways to do it, and one of the easiest ways is go to your spice cabinet, right? And open the cinnamon jar and just smell it. And start to really have your brain process it, pull it in. Do that with rosemary, do that with the different spices, and learn, start to hone that in. Put a little cinnamon in your coffee to see what it tastes like when it gets warm. And then you'll start to develop this palate so that when you taste some of these craft spirits, you're getting a richer experience, right? Because now you're tasting the cinnamon, you're tasting the caramel, you're tasting the vanilla, and you're getting all these cool things as part of that experience that you're going to get from going to some of these craft labels, which I think is really cool. So that's a great way for people to develop that sense of smell and taste when you're having some of these products, right?
Yeah. Get a good cocktail book and start making the cocktails that are in there.
Yeah.
If you are always just a gin and tonic person, but you want to try and make a Corpse Survivor #2, you should do it. Go get the stuff and make it, because it is so much fun. And when you have people over at your house and you're having a dinner party or whatever, that's really where that joy comes from. To get in there and hand somebody a cocktail and be like, I made that. What do you think?
It's kind of
and they're
fun.
like, holy cow, this is an amazing cocktail. How do I make it? You share that with each other, which is super fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to summons your inner bartender a little bit.
It is.
Ryan, off camera, do you have any other questions that you have thought of that, often Ryan's the one who asks the questions like, what was your first, memory of a fine cocktail that evokes this nice, so if I could channel my inner Ryan, since he's shaking his head at me, he doesn't have it. Just for fun, tell me something that, what was your first experience in your life, if you can remember one where you had that aha moment with a fine drink or cocktail or spirit and realized, I'm not going to drink this lemon drop or Cosmo anymore. I'm ready to put on my big boy pants and have a drink. Anything come to mind? You can take a turn each. I don't know.
Might have involved a serious hangover. The next morning, be like, I'll never drink that again.
No more.
Go ahead. What's yours?
Oh no! So I in 2015 I joined a local cigar club here, and the idea was you get together on Tuesday afternoons around 4 o'clock, and everybody brings a bottle, everybody brings a snack, people smoke cigars, hang out, talk, share life, right? And a guy brought a bottle of Eagle Rare, which is a bourbon that I was like, wow, that's really good. And then that's when the brain started firing off. Like, there's a whole nother world out here. So 2015, Eagle Rare, smoking cigars was kind of that first aha moment for me.
And now you had to have picked an allocated one. So now you're like, I can't get that anymore.
But back then I could go to Coltrane.
Oh yeah,
for $44.99. I could get a handle.
Yeah.
A handle of Eagle Rare, and it was collecting dust.
Yeah, and what's
Just
that going for now? And what's in the?
Yeah, you're lucky to get it for $60 if you can find it.
Right.
Yeah.
The allocated stuff has kind of gone berserk to the point where it's a little bit obnoxious. Now I didn't want to drink it. I'm like, okay, it's that hard to get. Guys in basements are driving the price up. Forget it. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing is once you start that journey, then you start to find makers that are not allocated, that are making these great little small craft brand whiskeys, or I have some favorites in my portfolio, and I do have to say this. Absorca is one of my absolute favorites in the portfolio. I'm not just saying that because we're here. Like, I can have that any time with a cigar. I can make a Manhattan, I can make a Negroni, I can do so many things. That was so cool, right? And so, you start to find different things in the industry that you can enjoy beyond the big allocated brands, right?
Yeah.
So,
Adrian, what you got?
My first experience with like a craft bar scene, there's a really cool place up in Fort Collins, Ace Gillette's.
Yes.
The first time I walked in there, I was like, whoa, this is what craft, it's almost like a speakeasy vibe in there. Kind of similar to like what District 11 is here in the Springs. And I think I ordered a bee's knees and then a Negroni, and like, it was just like, wow, that was eye-opening for me. Like, it kind of changes the way you view the bar scene and the restaurant scene. Like, when you start finding places like that, it's like people who are deeply passionate about what they're putting into the glass. That was kind of my eye-opener. So
I think mine would come actually from wine, of all places. And a friend of Travis and I has had a obsession with this French Bordeaux, and ended up having about 8 years in a row of vintages, and we waterfalled the whole thing. And I found that to be so enlightening in terms of the difference between seasons and flavor profiles, and sort of the unseen part of what's happening, and whether you're aging whiskeys or things like that. There's all sorts of different pieces that are coming together to create that profile, and I just found that to be very intriguing, and you kind of want to dig deeper into that and how it's happening. And I think that's what we put into what we do. Every time we're doing R&D, there is so much nosing and learning. I mean, we're working on an Amaro that is 3.5 years in the making, and exploring that, sensory system type of work. And it is. I mean, it's a training regimen. You stop lifting weights, you're going to get weaker, and same thing with your palate. You've got to constantly be after it and trying to find those new flavors. But I think it was that experience, and we just had a great time learning it all together. And
Did you bring us an Amaro sample? I mean, is that a truck?
No. I probably shouldn't even said it.
No, I'm excited. I want to know more.
Kind of under wraps.
When it's time, I want to know more about that.
It's not out. It'll probably come out in about 3 months, and that's going to be
great.
Yeah.
James, you're my guy.
Yeah, I got you, man.
Well, cool. All of you guys, thank you so much for joining us on Tap and Table. I learned a little bit that I didn't know. I know some of this, but it's fascinating, this world of the micro distributor. And pleasure to have you all on the show. And I guess that is a wrap.